Hello, Packer fans, wherever you may be. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast for December 7th, 2025. Hope you had a great weekend, and we are back into a game week for your Green Bay Packers. So let's go through some news and notes from practice right before we continue our series on how the team has done so far through the bye week. So big news from practice. Christian Watson returned to Monday's practice at the Hudson Center. The PUP window has opened. That means he has 21 days to either be added to the roster or put on the permanent IR list. My expectations are that he will be on the active roster, not put back on the injury list unless he suffers a significant setback in practice. We saw Christian Watson at training camp doing some sideline workouts. He looked great. We've also seen stuff on various social media sites of him practicing on his own, and he's looked fabulous. So I have every expectation that Christian Watson will be back sooner rather than later. Now, it's very possible he will be back against the Bengals. It's also possible that the Packers want him to practice for 2 weeks and then he'll be back against the Cardinals. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Christian Watson came out and he said he wants to be back on the field as soon as possible. So inevitably it's going to come down to the Packers medical staff, and they're very conservative in nature. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's more likely that he's playing in the Cardinal game than the Bengals game. So we're going to have to watch and see that. Very exciting. Starting offensive linemen Zach Tom and Aaron Banks were also back at practice on Monday. This is huge news. This gives both Zach Tom and Aaron Banks an opportunity to practice for a full week before the Bengals game. It also makes me feel very confident that the conservative medical staff must feel that they're not going to have a setback during a regular traditional practice. So hopefully we'll see Zach Tom and Aaron Banks practice throughout the week, and it's very likely both players will be back in the lineup against the Bengals. I would argue the Bengals is a great opportunity for a lot of these injured players to get back into the rotation against a arguably substandard opponent right now, especially on defense. With the exception of Hendrickson, no one else on the Bengals has been consistently been able to stop the run or get to the quarterback. So I think it's a good opportunity for offensive linemen to get a soft reboot into the starting rotation. Green Bay also opened the window for offensive lineman Jacob Monk to practice again for 21 days, and they have to decide to either shut him down for the year, release him, or put him on the active roster. So we're going to have to see what happens there. He's kind of a surprising addition because I'm not sure what role Jacob Monk has right now on this team. His most productive snaps have been as a backup center, but we have Sean Ryan, who I think is a better backup center than Jacob Monk. Now, theoretically, if there was an injury to Elton Jenkins, then Sean Ryan would move to center. Then we would probably move someone like a Jordan Morgan into his spot. So I'm not sure what Jacob Monk would be able to bring to the roster. Very important, did not practices here from Monday were Devontae Wyatt and Anthony Belton. Anthony Belton is sort of our swing tackle right now, so that's a big loss right there. Hopefully he'll get back into practice before the end of the week. Devontae Wyatt is a bigger factor because he really is a key to the run defense for the Green Bay Packers for the first 3 weeks before he was knocked out in the early going of the Cowboy game. And once Devontae Wyatt left the lineup against the Cowboys were able to run at will. It really set up the whole offense for the Cowboys to get back into gear. I seriously wonder if the Packers would have lost that game if Devontae Wyatt had stayed in the game. He was that impactful in the defense. So we're going to watch that very carefully. I would argue the Packers can do fine against the Bengals without Devontae Wyatt and Belton, but I'd feel better if they were available on game day. So we'll see what happens. Now we're going to continue our series on Packers' performance to date with the secondary. The secondary has exceeded expectations with 3 really good games. They struggled against the Cowboys, but Dak Prescott was having a game, so we need more games to see if the Cowboy game was an exception. Also, as I said, Devontae Wyatt's absence really helped the Cowboys both in the passing game and the running game, so we're going to have to see if the secondary can step it up over the next couple weeks against some very gettable opponents, in my opinion. It cannot be stated enough that the success of the secondary also is closely tied to the defensive line, who we talked about last week, or last video. They go hand in hand. The secondary is as good as the defensive line that forces the quarterback to get rid of the ball while the secondary is covering. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. So let's talk about these players, player by player, and their future expectations for the rest of the year. First, we're going to start out with Keyshawn Nixon. Nixon is on pace to have a career year by every metric. This is especially the case with pass breakups. He's had 5 pass breakups and is first in the league in this stat despite it being a bye week and playing one fewer game. He's had all of 6 pass breakups last year, and he's already at 5 this year through 4 games. So Keyshawn Nixon is going to continue to grow as a corner, and barring an injury, I think he's going to be one of the best values in the NFL at the position. I see no reason to believe that this will change. Nixon is only going to improve unless there's some sort of a significant injury. Next up, we have Carrington Valentine. Valentine has been very solid with the possible exception of the Cowboys game, but the whole defense struggled in that game. He's rated as a starting cornerback in the league for Pro Football Focus based on stats, which is an amazing thing for a former 7th round pick to be counted as a starting cornerback in this league. And it's not any doubt. He's definitely in the middle of the pack for cornerbacks, which is pretty significant from a 7th round pick. Brian Gutekunst did a great job of not only picking Carrington Valentine in the draft, but putting him in a position to succeed. Valentine has just scratched the surface of his potential, and I expect him to continue to grow as the season progresses. Next up, we have Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs is really too hard to judge right now. Nate Hobbs has been limited to injury due to injury. First, he had a knee injury. He was knocked out of the last game with a concussion. So he didn't miss the first game and a good chunk of the last game of the season. And he was limited in his snaps in the second game and the third game. So I think it's too early to tell what Nate Hobbs is going to bring this defense. But I'm assuming if he's healthy, I expect him to settle into being a solid slot defender like he was with the Raiders. I do expect Carrington Valentine to continue to start on the outside, barring an injury, which makes Nate Hobbs a lock to be that slot corner, which is really his strength. Next up, we have Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney is still playing at an elite level. He doesn't have the stats that he had last year because teams just are avoiding him. If you watch the All-22, he's always in the right place on coverage, and he supports the rest of the secondary at a high level. He's also the leader of the secondary. So Xavier McKinney might not have the stats, but he is an elite corner an elite safety and probably top 5 in the league at his position, and continues to be so good that teams refuse to test him deep. And that's a great bonus for the rest of the defense if quarterbacks are always worried about where Xavier McKinney is in the secondary. Evan Williams. Evan Williams is an up-and-coming star by every metric. He's an elite player at his position. This is particularly the case in run support, where he really has a strength. He is full of ability. He's a very solid teammate. He's very serious about his craft. I expect Williams to be an elite player at the position and will only improve over time. I would argue that the Packers have possibly a top 2 or 3 safety group in the NFL. The way Williams is playing and the way Xavier McKinney can take over a game, I think they're both elite, and that safety position is in great hands. Next up, we have Javon Bullard. And Javon Bullard has really struggled this year when pressed into service, mainly as a slot defender. He's been asked to fill in for Hobbs when injured, and the results have not been good. He really is better as a true safety. Bullard is really in a hard place with no clear role on the roster. Could he be traded or just regulated to a true backup safety role? I think if Nate Hobbs is healthy, Bullard becomes more of a backup special teams player, and I think that's the best role for him right now. So hopefully Javon Bullard in that safety role as a backup and in special teams could be more impactful, because he really was a liability in pass coverage so far this season. So that's going to do this edition of the Pack Attack Cast. We don't have a lot of information on the injuries yet. We'll have that later on in the week, but we gave you a rundown of that. And we've also talked about how the safety and corner position have played so far this season. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to look at the linebacker play so far this season, and I'm also going to give you more news and notes. Hopefully we'll have a press conference from the coaching staff that will give us a better feel for who's going to play, who's not going to play, and what they're working on during the bye week. So I'll have those updates for you tomorrow, so please give us a subscribe if you've not already done so. We're over 10,000 subscribers. And if you're already a subscriber, give us a like, because it really helps other people discover the channel. And we'll see you tomorrow. As always, go Pack Go.